Microsoft is starting to clamp down on installing Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. Recently, a video by BreedTech09, and a few other popular techtubers, revealed that Microsoft have plans in place to stop poor people from installing Windows 11 on their ancient hardware, which is going to piss lots of people off for sure, once it comes into effect. Microsoft does not want you to use the same hardware you have been using for probably the last 5 to 10 years, if not longer. They want you to purchase new hardware to run Windows 11, and the utter disgrace and amount of disrespect this puts towards the consumers is unbelievable, so Microsoft should be ashamed of themselves for letting things get to such a point. I am very disappointed in Microsoft, to be quite honest. This goes to show you that pricing poor people out of the computer market is really what's happening. They just don't want to admit that, and they could potentially be fraught with dominance issues if they decide to kill off support for Windows 10 too early on, when over half of the entire world uses Windows 10, and poorer nations will most certainly struggle to keep up with modern standards. Countries like Armenia are stuck on Windows XP because of how expensive upgrading your hardware and operating system is. It's an absolute fortune for businesses and consumers, so many like to try and put off upgrading for as long as possible, until there comes a time when that PC is no longer feasible to use, or it itself dies and stops working. Windows 11 proves that Windows really is just a service now, not an operating system. It is a massive mistake edition that should have never been released, and instead, Microsoft should have aimed at giving us something far better than what we already had. But here is the thing: Windows has always been for profit, not for quality, and what does the profit motive do to everything? That's right, it ruins it. And operating systems, excluding Linux or BSD, or any FOS system, is run by money. So is the entire internet. Advertisements are necessary because it's a huge way of people generating revenue. Companies use this method to buy viewers and get people to click. The same thing goes for those YouTubers who get money from YouTube. This is known as monetization, but you have to meet certain requirements before you are eligible to earn money off of YouTube. Maybe I will cover that in a future video. So, you really have not got much choice in the matter. It's either you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't. So upgrading will be quite costly, and not upgrading will leave you on an unsupported system. The only real alternative that unfortunately will not be for everyone is switching to Linux, because Linux is free and open source, does not have any bloat, spyware, adware, etc. It also does not force you to update your system constantly, and it gives you way more customization that would never be reachable in Windows or Mac OS. So while some people are migrating to it, it is not the be-all and all for the end of support for Windows 10 in less than a year at the time of this video being produced, and Microsoft really need to get started on thinking as to whether or not they should extend support for Windows 10 as an operating system. Otherwise, this could be a massive issue that will heavily affect their dominance. In fact, it could give leeway to Apple's Mac OS, Google's Chrome OS, and even Linux, because some people are just unhappy with this substandard piece of shit that is served to them on their plates, and it's also because inequality is greater, and I really mean this, greater than it has ever been in history. We have more people dying of famine or preventable disease or illness, and lots of people living at or below the poverty line, and these are the sorts of people who probably don't even have access to a PC or the internet. So how do you expect those poor people who have a tight budget to be able to all of a sudden get used to buying a new PC every 3 years? The world we live in is very much a disposable one, in which our products of our environment get wasted or thrown away too soon. This goes for essential stuff like food and certain resources, but the PC and mobile world is absolutely no different whatsoever. We are already used to buying a new phone once every 3 to 4 years. Although a lot of people still hold on to their phones, especially if they really need it and cannot afford a new one. The same goes for PC users, and refurbished computers are so popular it's not funny. Lots of people buy them due to their cheapness and price and upgradability, although that can be limited depending on a number of factors, but because they are cheap, more people will want to buy that over a newer, more expensive, and ultimately not much better computer. Sure, you might have the latest RAM and the greatest SSD, but that laptop or PC is marginally better than something that's about 5 or so years old, maybe even older, and lots of people are repurposing them with Linux, as Linux is well known for being able to really revive that older hardware like a champ. Lots of lightweight distros exist for the older and less powerful computers and laptops, so even though Windows 11 has all these new flashy features, it is the worst release by far. Just look at the disgraceful acts Microsoft is doing. Aren't you glad we do have alternative operating systems? Yeah, I am, but the problem is, a shit ton of software don't work on Mac OS, Linux, and other systems. So much is written for Windows that it makes switching almost impossible for pretty much nearly everyone who uses a PC. The only people who do use Linux and those other systems are ones that either have been for a long time, or the ones capable of switching and using those other systems, and you also have people who use multiple systems. They could be using a Windows system for Windows-only software, and maybe Linux or Mac OS, or even Chrome OS, for everything else. So Microsoft are really giving huge leeway to these other systems, which will make those companies and developers more money in the long run. Microsoft could lose its dominant player role in the PC market if too many bad business moves are made. This is like a game of chess, in which we could see defeat, but this is extremely unlikely because so many users worldwide rely on it, and even if they make you pay for what you should be able to get entirely free of cost, most users can and will. And like what's going on with a YouTube ad blocker fiasco, some fish will sway past your huge net Microsoft, and you won't give a damn two hoots about them. Those fish will either stay with Windows 10, switch to Mac OS, Linux, or another OS, or they could ditch their computer in favor of a mobile phone or tablet, as these offer a cheap and great way to browse the web, watch videos, do all that good stuff, as well as being great entertainment for kids and teenagers. Even some adults love their smartphones and tablets for entertainment. However, a certain majority of the market is PC users, as these are the majority of content creators on YouTube. They are also the majority that have a view and saying because Windows is the dominant system worldwide. Linux only has a small cult following by comparison, and even Mac OS doesn't quite stack up too well compared to Windows. However, its continual growth even in less price-sensitive markets like the US is somewhat concerning, not to me, but to Microsoft, or at least it should be, as this is already showing a steady sway away from the #1 desktop OS used worldwide. Even Chrome OS on Linux have a very respectable 3%, and that's constantly growing as well. So what's going on here, huh? It's simple. Some people are not prepared to pay for, let's face it, substandard garbage that will only continue to get worse as time goes by with future releases. More control will be taken away from you, the user, and Microsoft will control your PC the way they want to, and there ain't nothing you or me can do about that, except I use Linux, and the people like me are not controlled by this shit. People who do use Mac OS on Linux often report a far more positive experience. That's why less negative connotation exists around those other systems. The only system comparable in controversy is Android and Chrome OS, because Google is also known for planting dirty tactics to collect data, track users and all, into their beloved operating system, but Microsoft have been doing worse things for a much longer time period. Google has only risen to prominence in the last 20 or so years, and Microsoft, like Google, will continue to be a dominant player in the tech world. It is an undefeatable giant that nobody can take down, and even though we might hate what they do, we can do absolutely nothing about it. We are powerless, and we are Microsoft's lab rats. We are the creatures that get tested and riddled with their shit, and as sad and unfortunate as that is, nobody is willing to ditch the witch, honestly speaking, because the software pool which engulfs Windows is simply too longer. The gaming experience is also far better reportedly on PC than it is Mac or Linux, so this makes Windows a good and often better choice for gamers. However, Linux is seeing the sun in this area, as the Steam Deck has proven that it is quite capable of gaming. Your only real problem is that the majority of developers do not rewrite existing or create new games natively for Linux, as not enough people use it, and let's face it, do you really know of any real big gamer that uses Linux? I don't, and I bet you don't either. That's because so many games are not compatible with it. Everybody crazes over titles like Grand Theft Auto, Forza Horizon, Need for Speed, etc., and all of these very popular video games. Guess what? They are not natively available on Linux, so Linux in most cases is actually a bad decision for gaming, as there is only a limited number of native games on Steam for Linux, and most physical discs of video games are Windows only too. What do you think of Microsoft's decision to clamp down on installing Windows 11 on unsupported hardware? Do you think it is a good or bad one? Let us all know in the comments section below. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. See you next video. Bye for now.